Hey guys, Aunt Becca here today, and I'm kind of sleepy today, but I have chapter 5 of Chocolate by Hershey, so let's find out what happens today. Chapter 5, Love and Chocolate. Milton discovered that the English Candy Company was cutting the bulk caramels imported from Lancaster into bite-sized pieces. They then dipped the caramels into chocolate, wrapped them, and put their own name on them. Milton learned that not only caramels, but also all kinds of centers, nuts, cordial cherries, nougat, and toffee were being dipped in chocolate. They were a treat for the wealthy people. One day, while Milton was in England, he was invited to a garden party. There was a lavish spread of cakes and little sandwiches, and as a special treat, dipped chocolate confections. The children at the party took their chocolates and ran off with them. Milton was curious. He followed the youngsters to where they were hiding behind a hedge. Milton wondered what on earth was going on. As he watched, the children licked the chocolate coating off the candies and spit out the centers. They didn't care what was in the center. They liked the chocolate. Who else likes chocolate? Me too. Milton had always wanted to make candy for children. Maybe he should think about making chocolate. Children obviously loved it. But he would need to make sure children could afford it. He never forgot how he saved his own precious pennies for candy. Milton put this thought away for the future. Back in the United States, it was the World's Fair time once again, and Milton eagerly headed to Chicago for the festivities. Most fairgoers headed straight for George Ferris's huge new wheel, with seats that took passengers high into the air. But Milton's nose led him to an exhibit of chocolate-making machinery from Germany. Milton returned to the exhibit again and again. The machinery was spellbinding. Here's a picture of the children in England eating the chocolates. Chocolate making started with cocoa beans, which came from the tropical cocoa tree. A roaster cooked the beans, a hammering table knocked their shells off, and a grinding machine mashed the beans into rich, dark liquid called chocolate liqueur. This liqueur, which contains no alcohol, is the base for all chocolate products. To make cocoa powder for baking, a large press squeezed the liquor until a fat called cocoa butter was pressed out. This extra cocoa butter could then be added back to chocolate liqueur along with sugar to make rich and tasty chocolate candy. Milton was so excited by chocolate making that he bought the display machinery and shipped it back to Lancaster when the fair ended. He remembered the children in England who loved chocolate. He wanted to make chocolate for children, and he was sure he would sell it. So, in a corner of Lancaster Caramel Company, Milton began experimenting with chocolate. He hired 2 experienced chocolate makers to teach him how to run the machinery. Now he could make his own chocolate to flavor and coat his caramels. But he also began making some purely chocolate products. Milton had to decide which cocoa beans to use, how much sugar and flavoring to add, how long to mix the chocolate. Each one of these important decisions made a difference in the flavor and texture of the chocolate. Then Milton molded the finished chocolate into candies of all different shapes and sizes. Before long, his delicious new treats were ready to sell and eat. He proudly presented Hershey's Cocoa, Hershey's Baking Chocolate, and his fancy chocolate candies. Only one cloud shadowed his new project. In April of 1894, Aunt Millie fell ill. At first it didn't seem serious, but she grew worse. After only a few days, she died. Her death was a great blow to Milton. He owed much of his success to his faithful Aunt Millie, and he missed her very much. Still, Milton could not let his unhappiness interfere with the large business he had to run. He traveled all over, visiting small candy stores and trying to get them to sell his caramels and his brand new chocolate products. He especially enjoyed visiting a store in Jamestown, New York, and he returned to it more often than he needed to. A saleswoman there, Miss Catherine Sweeney, known as Kitty, was the cause of these frequent visits. Milton thought she was beautiful. He especially liked her auburn hair and flashing smile. Oh, here's a picture of her. She is pretty. Milton wrote to her often, and he sent her a special box of chocolates he had made and wrapped himself for her birthday. He began to think of her as my Kitty. Even though Milton was quite a bit older than Kitty, he got his courage up, and the next time he was in Jamestown, he asked her to marry him. To his delight, Kitty said yes, and they were married in May of 1898 in New York City. Milton and Kitty returned to Lancaster, and Milton was happier than he thought was possible. His father was back in Pennsylvania and seemed settled at last. With his family around him and Kitty at his side, Milton was ready to do even greater things. He had big plans, and they all involved chocolate. Well, that's the end of Chapter 5, guys, and I'll see you next time. Mwah.